fishing record numbers right now. They really are. I mean, the peak of the walleye numbers occurred back in the 80s, and right now I got a really good friend who's the leading Lake Erie biologist, and he said to me the other day that they have 50 million walleye in the lake that are above 15 inches, which is the legal length to be able to catch fish. So he said if you wanted to count all of the fish in the lake as far as walleye goes, you could be possibly looking at 100 million walleye, which is, like I said, touching record numbers, man. So the fishing for the next few years is going to be out of this world. And a lot of charter captains are going out and they're filling their clients' limits in just a couple of hours. I mean, the fishing has been that good. Now, recently, this spring, in the last 2 weeks, because the weather's been so up and down, fishing's been rather tough. I mean, when you have a big wind on Lake Erie and you have some rain or some precipitation, it muddies up the entire lake and the fish can't see your baits, and so the fishing's tough. But just the last couple of days, some of the main reef complexes that the fish spawn on, the reefs actually filter out a lot of the mud. If you look at satellite pictures, it muddies up the entire.
Sorry.
No problem. If you look at satellite pictures, that's how we judge on where we want to fish, because Lake Erie is such a big body of water. To try to cut down on some of your search time, we'll start with the satellite picture and look at it and say, okay, well, there's your clean water. And usually the cleanest areas start around the reefs because they filter through all the mud, and then it expands from there. And what we're looking for is a green colored water, because at this time of year, you're hardly ever going to get a real clean water. And as a matter of fact, if you do find really clean water, it's usually vacated of fish right now, because what will happen is the bait wants to stay in the stained and dirtier water. And why? It's because the temperature is warmer in that versus the clean water. So the bait stays in the stained and dirty water, and the walleye will follow them through there. So we're looking for the green stained water where the bait still wants to be there, the fish are still there, but you get 2 or 3 foot of visibility, which gives the fish a chance to see your bait, and you can go out there and really catch some real big fish. Now, when you came with us, we fished in the summer a couple years back, and we were in a transition phase where the fish were roaming, and you really had to stay on it almost from day to day. And that's where the charter captains excel, because they're out there every single day. And for the weekend warriors, sometimes it's tough to keep up with the fish, because, I mean, it's just such a big lake out there. But because it's a big lake, I see often that anglers from the south or from the west are intimidated because they hear these horror stories about boats being swamped or whatever. But if you come up and you bring your boat and you go out on a nice day, or you're out with some experienced anglers like me, for example, I got a 21-foot G3 boat, and I've been out in 13-foot waves out there on Lake Erie. Okay.
Hey,
now I don't
13?
I don't try to go out on those days, but it was a tournament day and they sent us out for some reason. So I've been out in some Hawaii 5-0 type of waves where I should have been in a surfboard than in a boat. Okay. But I feel comfortable in my 21-foot G3 because it's a deep boat. I feel comfortable out in 6 and 8 foot waves. I'll go out there all day in those waves. Now, bass boats are a different story. 3-footers are about a comfort zone. Once you get over 3-footers, then you might want to think about staying in the bays or the rivers or the harbors and waiting for a nicer day. But the smallmouth fishing out there has been getting better and better recently too. So guys coming up, you might want to think about staying in the bays or the river. Guys coming up from out down south to come up to catch a smallmouth of their lifetime. The next couple of years is a good opportunity to do that for sure.
Well, guys, I think in the first I hadn't clicked the headphone button right there, and I think we missed out, but on Jonathan in about the first minute or so. But we are with Jonathan Shoemaker. As you could tell here in the last few minutes, he's been talking about the Lake Erie area. He also fishes some tournament trails over there for smallmouth. He's really catching a lot of walleye. He's just like everybody else up there, just kind of waiting for the water to get right. And when it does, man, I'll tell you, it's a feeding frenzy. But we're glad that you guys joined us here on the Fripp Outdoors podcast. We're tickled to death to have Jonathan with us here. He's been talking a little bit about some of the weather and everything that's going on and the potential that they have. So really, Jonathan, when you guys get on the lake, I mean, what is task number one? I mean, are you going after walleye first? You going after smallmouth first, or what's the first thing you guys do?
Well, at this time of year, I target walleyes because walleye are a lot more likely to eat when the water is super cold. I mean, you really have to hand feed the bass at this time of year, and I kind of don't have the patience to sit there and throw a Ned rig or something like that. But in the next week or two, when that water temperature approaches 40 degrees, I'll break out a couple of my old trusty weapons for the smallmouth that they cannot resist. I got a couple I brought. I'll show you if you're interested. Cold water smallmouth bait, the old reliable hair jig. Okay, this here, 3/8 ounce, and I always have a trailer hook on that thing too. Okay, it helps for the short biters, and when it's cold out there, you don't have to throw a minnow on this or a grub or something like that. You can get away with just the hair actually waving in the water, and that imitates the body of the minnow. And this is a very reliable jig for cold water. Now, this is a slower presentation. I personally like to fish a blade bait when the water's cold. This is a Vibe blade bait right here. Okay,
is that what they call like a Sonar or something?
Yeah, Sonar is another version of them. And, there's a lot of companies that make them, and actually guys are molding them at home now out of their lead molds and fishing them. This Vibe was the most popular brand back in the day on Lake Erie, and this can double as a walleye bait right now out on the reefs for where the fish are spawning. And a lot of guys are throwing hair jigs and blade baits for walleye right now too. But I'll take these same baits and go find a school of smallmouth and also use them. But the key for a blade bait when the water is cold is most guys overwork the bait because they feel like they got to really rip it and feel the vibration. And the key is that you really want small lifts with your rod tip of only like maybe 6 inches or so, to where you barely, as soon as you feel that thing vibrate, you want to lower it back down, touch the bottom, lift it up, feel it vibrate, and drop it back down. Now, to do that, you want a rod that has some good backbone to it, and you want a real extra fast action on that tip too, because you don't want a limp rod that's going to absorb all of that action. You want something that's a little bit stiffer for these baits. Now, one of the keys for this bait is when you do get a bite on this thing, man, you really want to hammer them on it, okay? I seem to lose, when I first started fishing these baits, I would hammer on the smallmouth, and I'd have them on there, and I would just kind of, like I normally would with a drop shot. I don't want to rush the fish to the boat. You let them do their thing down there, wear themselves out. Well, with this thing, you really want to crank on them. And like as soon as you set the hook, the rod loads up, you want to crank on them and get them near the boat as soon as possible. Once you have them on after about 3 or 4 seconds, that fish should be on and you'll be good. But the tendency is to lose a fish after having them on only for a second or two. I don't know what they're doing down there, but that's why you got to bring them to you as fast as possible. And a lot of bass guys like to do that nowadays. When we're out there fishing on the lake with drop shots, these guys really want to just start cranking in that reel as fast as they can, and they're losing fish, and I'm like, slow down. Well, this is one of those baits that's actually opposite of that. And this is a cold water presentation. I put this blade bait down after the water temperature hits 45 degrees, and then I'll substitute a tube, or I'll actually start breaking out the drop shot at that point. But that's the kind of couple go-tos for the cold water that we're facing this year. The one other one that I really love, and I caught a bunch of largemouth on them just recently, is the good old jerk bait that everybody has in their box if they're a bass fisherman. And now they make really expensive jerk baits like the Mega Bass and other versions of that. This is just a Rapala. It's a shadow wrap. It's a deep 11, and I got teeth marks up and down this thing from fish. And I actually got a little Sharpie paint on this underneath there, added a little pink to it, and I wrote a pink on the side. I like to customize baits a little bit. And speaking of customizing, that is the new hottest thing in walleye fishing, is customizing baits. Now, there are so many people painting baits now, it's ridiculous. I mean, for example, the most popular walleye bait there is on Lake Erie right now for trolling is the deep diving bandit. That's what one of these looks like right here, okay? This thing comes in about 8.
Who makes that?
This is Bandit.
Okay.
Okay. And this thing comes in about 8 stock colors. Okay. But painters have found out that if you make something look pretty to fishermen, they'll buy anything. Okay. So what they've done is there's literally 1,000 different patterns out there made by local painters all around Lake Erie here. And the guys will buy them, because you'll find out, believe it or not, there's the one fish that I've fished for my entire life that cares about color more than anything is a walleye. Okay, even bass fishing, if you go black and blue or green pumpkin, maybe some days white, that's all you need. Okay, but when it comes to walleye, I mean, there's days where you can try 10 different colors, and then the one color that's different, you put that out, and then it's gangbusters. So color makes a difference. Walleye fishermen know that, and so in turn, they get crazy and buy custom bandits and custom painted crankbaits, and it gets pretty expensive. You know, this is a $7-8 bait. Now it sells for 12 or 13 once somebody's painted it for you. You know,
same way as with, I always, when my buddy Lonnie Stanley, who made rivet frogs and top toads and everything, and I'd say, well, Lonnie, what difference does it make what color the top of the frog is? You know, I mean, they can't see the top, have these wild colors on the top and everything. And that's what he said. He said, that's basically for the fishermen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the frogs, a bass isn't going to see the top of that frog, you know. I mean, he's basically just going to see the silhouette and the color of his belly.
And I think that's a great analogy for bass fishermen. Okay, but for walleye fishermen, you know, I just saw a video the other day. They got these really cool underwater video cameras now called water wolves, where a guy will place it in line, on his line, 5 to 6 feet in front of his bait. So you can actually watch a walleye come in, track behind your bait. And I was always told that a walleye has his eyes near the top of his head, so they always come up and hit it from underneath. Well, that's not exactly true, and that water wolf camera has shown that, because that thing, that fish sometimes goes above it and comes down and hits it. It comes and T-bones it from the side. So I think color all around your bait when it comes to walleye actually makes a difference. Now, we're trolling almost all the time for walleye, okay? And what that means is you got 2 rods a person. So if just me and you go out, we got four rods out there, and let's say there's this color that's working awesome for us. Okay, you got to have 4 of this color. Okay, so that gets very expensive. I got a box of these bandits alone that's worth $1,000, just full of bandits. You know, that's just one crankbait. You know, another crankbait that's the best part of these custom baits also is whoever paints it can make the name up for it. Okay, for example, this is called Pink Panties, okay? And you just get the silliest names for them, but if you painted it, now it's your bait and your color, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Now this here this is a rogue bait. This is called a Perfect 10. This is the second hottest bait, and if you're not pulling a bandit, you're pulling a rogue, okay? Now this is a shallow diving bait, so normally we're putting this, we put this out about 20 to 25 foot, and then we'll actually put a snap weight on the line, and then that weight's about 2 ounces, and we'll with experience, knowing how far you got to let it out to get to the depths that you want. Okay, but this rogue here, they call them Perfect 10, or a lot of Lake Erie anglers have shortened the term to P10s. This is a super popular bait and very, very effective. And just because it's a shallow diver, once again, it doesn't mean that you can't fish them deep behind a dipsy diver or like I usually use as a snap weight system.
Well, that's all cool. Speaking of new stuff and everything else, I just got word that the new designs on the Fripp T-shirts are out, and so you guys just get there on Fripp and Folly, if I can get it in there, Fripp and Folly .com. All the cool shirts. You'd like these, Jonathan. They got a lot of the wicking shirts, really nice quality. And we'll see if we can't get you some for being a guest on here. And I mean, these things are really nice. You guys will really like those. They're just cool as they can be. Here's a cool dude. It's hard to see on that right there, I know, but he's throwing a cast net. I can't get my centered there. You see that shirt right there? I mean, that's just the kind of things that they're doing, and just real nice quality shirts. I just enjoy them. I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt. I've got a deal on underneath it, but I don't even know what this one has on the back. You'll have to tell me what that is.
It's got a large mouth there. Lots of bite.
Large mouth eating a shad there.
Yep.
But frippandfolly.com. Check them out, boys. I mean, the shirts are really cool. And also, you see on here, share to your page, a chance to win some of those shirts. You'll be eligible. Anybody that shares these, they'll come in and they'll pick a winner, and you'll be able to win some cool stuff from Fripp Outdoors. So, Fripp Outdoors, where's your adventure? And where's our adventure is today with none other than Jonathan Shoemaker. And Jonathan, I got to ask, because I know I fished with you, and so we got on some fish, but people around here and around, we ain't got a body of water as big as Lake Erie. I mean, that thing's like an ocean. Well, so where would you? I mean, some of us, we want to take off. We think, man, we want to see some cool part of the country. We want to go up there, and we want to fish. I mean, man, that's overwhelming.
It is. Nowadays with the internet, there's a lot of message boards and fishing reports, and people try to keep up that way with the bite and the hottest bite. But smallmouth are one thing, as far as you usually try to pick a particular depth, and you can usually stay with that depth, and then you go work the structure over at that depth. But walleyes, they're different. They're nomadic, and they move from day to day, and every day is different. So I'm friends with a lot of charter captains, and I get a lot of their information. And basically, it's a coordinated effort amongst fishermen here to try to make sure that everybody's aware of where the best bite is. And since we got this going, I actually got a nice deal going with our local CBS News network this year, where in the mornings on Thursdays, I'll be going on and reporting where the hottest bite is for the weekend angler. And hopefully I can help some guys get on fish also, because you just go out, you take your boat out, and you hope to get on them. You are going to be in for a lot of slow days. It's a lot of water out there. And
yeah, I mean, there's a lot we fished, around the Bass Islands.
And we fished 40 miles east of that for the walleye.
Well, that is true. We did do that. I mean, we could see Cleveland in the distance there, but you look at that where we were there at Put-in Bay, and then, but you can go all the way to Buffalo, New York.
I have a tournament in Buffalo this summer for smallmouth, but the walleye and the smallmouth are just as good on the east end over there. Everything has a certain time zone where it excels. Okay. For example, the Bass Islands area right now is the walleye home right now, because that's where a giant chunk of the 50 million walleye go to spawn. But as soon as they're done spawning, and especially the big females, they head east and they're going towards the deeper water. And they love the deeper waters towards the east side of Cleveland and into Pennsylvania.
And you can just follow that migration.
Absolutely you can. And guys will say, we're talking about schools of fish. Like I was saying earlier, there's 50 million catchable walleyes over 15 inches. So I might be on a school, or a charter captain might be on a school of tens of thousands of walleyes. And,
unbelievable.
yeah, and he can follow that school, from day to day. Now, it ain't a due east pattern, for example.
Right.
Of course things change, and when currents change, the fish will move. But in general, the pattern is from west to east throughout the year. And then come fall and the winter, those same fish are headed back towards the west, where they'll stage outside of bays, outside of reefs and harbors, waiting for the spawn to happen again. Now, smallmouth usually do a shallow to deep thing. I don't see them, or at least there isn't any scientific data on Lake Erie to show that the smallmouth are migrating 20 and 30 miles to spawn. It's more like they come into the shallows and they spawn, and then they go back out in their home areas into the deeper waters out there. It's different. Like, okay, the east end of the lake is a lot deeper on average than the central basin, and the western basin, where the islands are, is the shallowest areas of the lake. And the western basin by the islands, it averages 30 foot deep. In the central basin, it's 40 to 50 foot. Now, when I'm going to go for that tournament over in Buffalo, the average depth out there is 50 to 60 foot deep. And those bass actually act a lot different over there. For example, in late July, that tournament happens in late July. And in late July around my home here, just west of Cleveland, I'll usually be catching fish in 20 to 25 foot range. And when I say that, I mean that's the top of the reef where they'll set up on, even though that the bottom of the reef might be in 30 foot. Well, from all my studies and stuff, it seems like the fish I'm going to be targeting in Buffalo at that same type of year are at the top of the structure. The top of that structure is in 40, 45 foot deep. Have you ever caught smallmouth that deep?
Mm-mm.
No. And so it's going to be a new ball game for me. And I think some of the biggest challenges I'm going to find, to be honest with you, is trying to decipher what my marks are on the screen, because at 45 foot deep, you have a whole host of different types of fish that could be there. I mean, with the sheephead there also, and the walleye and everything like that, you're liable to catch anything on that, so.
I had a comment here from my old buddy Thomas Fowler. He wanted to know if his G3 1756 is up to Lake Erie. In places, I guarantee you can, you laugh, and I know he posted that to be funny, but really, I mean, that day we were out there, and I mean, we were way out there, and it was, my gosh, it was just calm as a farm pond.
We have calm days just like everybody else. And the key is to know the forecast, because the lake can go from glass to a disaster pretty quickly with an approaching front or something like that. But I, for example, I was out there last year. We were 9 miles off the shore trolling. There's probably 50 boats on this school of fish, and we're all zigging and zagging and being respectful of each other. And here comes a little duck boat, and that thing wasn't bigger than 17 foot and was flat bottom, and he's out there catching fish just like we all are. Yeah. Next thing you know, I look over to my side, and there's a pontoon boat out there trolling. 9 miles offshore in Lake Erie, a pontoon boat out there trolling, okay? We have nice days. You can get out there on the nice days. It's just you need to be really aware of the weather and what's approaching. And
that's a fact. I mean, when we were there, I mean, me going out there, of course, the story of the whole thing of how I had to pull my boat and everything else, and got out there, and I just knew, I mean, we're looking at, I mean, you get out there, I mean, you think it's like an ocean. It takes you a minute for us to realize that's fresh water.
Well,
I'm thinking, holy crap, man, this place is freaking huge. And we pass a lighthouse as we go out, and it's just as calm as it could be. In fact, you're talking about trolling, because, I mean, I'd rather be in hell with a broke back as to troll. But we used the trolling motor. I mean, that's basically what we did, put out some planer boards, cast out there, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was as comfy as sitting right here in my office.
And people hear the words troll and quite often associate that with being boring, honestly. Okay. Well, if you're on Lake Erie and you're trolling, If you're bored, then you're in the wrong spot, because when you're in the right spot and you're trolling on Lake Erie, you got rods coming in and rods going out, rods being baited. And I'm telling you right now, you can stay busy the entire time. I've been out there and fishing hard and just working and working and working. And I look at the clock and 3 hours has gone by and it felt like a half hour, you know, and I'm like, I need to drink something because I haven't done anything but fish and move rods and bring fish in and net them. And then, you know,
Yep.
the fishing's that good for walleye that you stay real busy when you're trolling out there. You know?
Oh yeah, and like I say, it's something, guys. If you've not experienced any of that, I mean, it's fun. If you want to go to a place that you've never been to or whatever, I mean, the people up there are so nice. I mean, the restaurants and the little cafes and all this stuff you get to eat. You get to eat yellow perch in a restaurant. Come on. Now, we ain't going to be able to eat that around here. Them things are tasty, and walleye, and just the atmosphere is cool, and it's just a neat place. But now, Jonathan, you're talking about catching walleye on like a great body of water or anything like that. I mean, is it similar, the techniques or whatever, like some of the places we have around here have walleye?
Like Lake Stockton, for example.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, at times it can be similar. For example,
so that sonar, wouldn't that be a good bait?
Absolutely. You know, and structure fishing for walleye is the same in most bodies of water where you're looking for points and you want to fish around timber. I know Lake Stockton's famous for having a bunch of timber in there, and the walleyes set up around that also. Okay. For example, when we were on Bull Shoals, we had a couple of big tournaments on Bull Shoals for walleye. And the first time we went there, boy, the entire field struggled. The entire field could not figure out those Arkansas walleye. There were a couple of guys who took Lake Erie type of trolling methods down to the dam area in the deep, deep water, and they were the ones that were successful. Come back again the next year, and then all of a sudden, everybody figured out that if you go up into this one creek arm, you can troll shallow shad wraps and troll the shorelines and the points in there, just like we're trolling out on the lake, but in shallow water. And they caught a whole bunch of fish that year, the very next year on Bull Shoals. It was just a matter of figuring out where the fish like to set up, per se. You know, once you figured it out, trolling's trolling. You know, I mean, you might have a different bait or a different lead to it, but you still know how to run boards and run how to handle 4 rods at once. You know, and like you said earlier, nowadays, not everybody needs a kicker motor like a Yamaha 8 horsepower on the back of their boat to troll. You know, with the inventions of autopilot and everything on these Minn Kotas nowadays, quite often, most of the time, I'm trolling with my Minn Kota running on the front of the boat, and I got the handheld in my hand in the back of the boat, and I'm just, you know, controlling with a little couple pushes of the button to get my direction and line and all of that. So that's also technological advance that's really helped the trolling. You know, I use my kicker, the 8 horsepower Yamaha on the back, when I want to turn into some bigger waves on Lake Erie and that. But if you live outside of Great Lakes, you should be able to troll all day with your trolling motor on the front of the boat. So don't think you don't have the equipment. You can go get yourself some catfish rods from Walmart and hook up some 10 to 12 pound line on those rods and go out there and start trolling for fish on the reservoirs of Missouri and going north from there.
I feel bad because just over your shoulder right there, I see that. So I'm going to have to kind of offset it a little bit and kind of even things out.
That's fine. That's fine.
You know, now with because I know you put that on there just for my benefit. So I thought, well, maybe I'll.
For your viewers, let's ask who won the last time Ohio State played Alabama in a game that mattered.
Hey, nobody remembers that anymore.
Okay.
Nobody even remembers, man. All they remember is who's on top now, and that's Roll Tide, baby. Roll Tide. Speaking of the best, what about the smallmouth? I mean, what's going to happen when you guys hit the lake? What's the deal with the smallmouth? what's the go-to bait and what's happening with them?
Well, the go-to bait is everybody fishes a drop shot for 6 or 7 months of the year nowadays, and
so you got to locate them.
Oh, sure. Obviously, you got to locate them, and that obviously is the difference between a good fisherman and a great fisherman on Lake Erie. To be honest with you, I bet you, and this happens for largemouth fishermen also on bodies of water like Kentucky Lake. I put a lot of hours on my big motor last year, and the only reason they're on there is because all I'm doing is driving around and graphing, Scott. I've been out there for days, literally. I don't even bring a rod because all I'm trying to do is locate good structure, okay? And it constantly amazes me how I'll go over the same pieces of structure, months apart and just kind of dissect them and figure out a little bit more about it and a little bit more about it and find another finger that branches off of this reef. And having all the most likely points graphed and marked is a huge advantage to me, because then I know, and then I know what the fish look like once I mark them on my depth finder,
Mm-hmm.
So once I see them down there, I don't even have to fish for them. I just go back to them when I'm ready to catch them, So I think graphing for the fish, taking the time to graph for them and drive around and not just feeling like because you can cover so much more ground at 10 miles per hour than you can on a drift dragging a tube or something like that,
Yeah.
So a guy who really is dedicated and goes out there and graphs and graphs and graphs, that's the guy you really want to be with, because he's going to have a lot of options, and he'll know that I got these sets of waypoints here that are good at this time of year or at 30 foot. And, like I said earlier, a lot of times on Lake Erie, the smallmouth like to stay at a certain depth when they're feeding. So I could be in Vermilion, Ohio, and catching fish at 20 foot down. And I know darn well if I go 20, 30 miles away in Lake Erie, if I start looking for the areas that I've already graphed that have potential for 20 foot, that there's going to be smallmouth there at that same time of year.
Now, what over there if we're putting bait, is that Clinton, Ohio?
That's Port Clinton, Ohio.
Port Clinton, Ohio.
Yes.
That's, wouldn't you think that a lot of people around, say the Midwest or whatever, when they go, that's probably the place they go, is it not? One of the top places
for bass fishing, absolutely, no doubt about it. Now, I'll say this for your viewers or whoever's listening: if you're looking for the trophy smallmouth of a lifetime, you're better off going to Buffalo, because right now Buffalo is putting out 6-pound plus fish constantly on a regular basis, versus you're going to get numbers on the west side of the lake over in the Port Clinton area and around the Bass Islands. And I tried to get you to come up to Pelee Island, which is the biggest island in Lake Erie. It's across the Canadian border there. And, I take trips up there all the time because the fishing is just outstanding up there, not only for numbers, but big fish also. And the reason why is because there's less pressure up there. Guys aren't willing to take the drive up there. It's a 25-mile drive across the lake, or a ride across the lake to get up there. People aren't willing to pay the money to get the licenses and stuff. So those fish are a little less exposed, and they're a lot more likely to eat your bait, and it's a good thing up there.
Well, then also, I mentioned yellow perch. That's something, a lot of people like them. They're wonderful to eat.
The best thing about yellow perch, people don't understand unless they live on the Great Lakes. You would not believe, in the fall, there will be flotillas, and I mean flotillas of boats out there, okay? I'm not joking you when I say this. Within 1 square mile, when the perch fishing's good and the perch are all schooled up, there'll be over 1,000 boats all anchored up in a certain depth in a line and in a groups, and we call them perch packs, is what we call them.
Yeah.
And everybody's friendly on those deals. I cringe sometimes because people will anchor up within 20 yards of each other out there on that lake, and they'll start perch fishing. And the limit for perch on Lake Erie right now in Ohio waters is 30 fish per person. Mm-hmm. So once you pull in 90 fish for the day, you got yourself a mess of meals, and that's the best eating. It's better than walleye. I prefer a yellow perch over even a grouper. You know, I mean, it's just outstanding meat. It's very tender. It's a mild fish, and it's great. Now, it's a pain in the butt to clean because, you know, the average fish is 10, 11 inches, you know.
It'd
so
be like filleting a crappie.
I mean, yeah, you know, and if you got 80 to 90 of them, that'll take you a while.
Hey,
you know?
Man, these guys out here that I know, man, all my crappie guys, they don't care.
Well, here...
They'll whoop out a mess. They'll fillet them things. No
we
problem.
Got businesses here that literally make, you know, a good business just on fish. You know, there's fish cleaners all down the shores of Lake Erie just because of the walleye and the perch. You know, they charge so much per pound or whatever, and I take advantage of those guys. I give them some of my money, but you know, they save me a couple, 2-3 hours worth of clean.
Oh, yeah.
In return, I get, you know, the meat's all kept cool and good for you, and it's not too pricey or anything, so it's worth it to me.
Yeah, well, out here, I mean, in the Midwest, I mean, we're rolling good. I don't keep up too much with the bass stuff, but from what I understand, it takes some pretty good sacks to win on these bass tournaments, and I know the crappie are really starting to hit. I'm heading to Oklahoma actually tomorrow, and we're going to go after some whites and some crappie, and then probably go after some catfish and stuff with my buddy Jeff Williams. We're going to get in his big bowcat and do some fun stuff. So a lot of what's going on right here, and I know you guys are just itching to get out there. It's probably been a long winter. And,
you know, up north here.
But I mean, you've been running your rabbit dogs. I mean, you got to see that.
I transition straight from hunting to fishing, you know, and in between there's a little gap usually, and we'll hit the streams for the steelhead because at that time of year the steelhead are up in the rivers, and
Yep.
as a matter of fact, right now for the next couple of weeks, steelhead are starting to spawn in the rivers, and the Ohio Division of Wildlife has stocked millions of steelhead into these rivers over the last 10 years or so.
And they're fun to catch.
Oh yeah, and you know, I mean, I'm not joking you when I say, you know, you catch 10 or 12 pound steelhead down there, and that's a fight. When a 10-pound steelhead, when you hook up with that, first off, you're almost always using light line because they don't bite on big thick line. Okay, So if you're using fly rod or big or thin line, and a 10 to 12 pound steelhead wants to turn sideways, he's smart enough to turn sideways where the current will wash him down. And there's no standing in one place and reeling that fish in as he jumps to you. No, you're chasing that fish down the river because if you try to stop him, he's going to snap your leader, okay? So quite often you're on an adventure down the river 100 yards until you finally get him up into the shallows where you can land him.
You know, guys, you ought to go over on YouTube and get over on Jonathan's page right there on Jonathan Shoemaker and watch some of the stuff that he's doing, and he's taking some guys out and they're shooting some fun videos, and he'll show you them toad smallmouth that he's got and them big walleye. I think you do a great job on those videos, Jonathan. And you guys ought to, you know, everybody's looking at YouTube now. That's the hot place. And just get over there and get it on Jonathan's YouTube page and watch, and you'll be wanting to get up there. I mean, everybody's looking for a new place to go. So some of us Southern boys, let's head up north because, by gosh, I'll tell you, they come down there and fish in the South. So we should reciprocate, give them a little business, and go up there.
Come on up in the summer. We want your money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as far as, you know, honestly, I probably take more fishermen just randomly that I just met off of Facebook. I've never met them in person, and they message me and say, hey, I see you take people out. Will you take me out? And I say yes, and I take them out. But if it don't fit my schedule and someone does message me, I'll turn you on to the best charter captains in the business who will make sure that you go home with a full cooler, unless it's for bass. We don't keep smallmouth bass. Only hillbillies keep smallmouth bass to eat.
I hear that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a fun place up there. I know that I had a blast. It's been a while now since I've been up there, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, we caught smallmouth and we caught all the walleye that we wanted to catch. And I said this earlier. I mean, the people up there are so friendly. You can go into any bait shop and these guys will help you out. What was that? Lake Erie Outfitters? Was that the one that we went to?
Since you said that, you know, you said, how do people find the fish on such a big body of water? Besides social media and charter captains, you know, the bait stores. The bait stores are a very good source of information because they want you to come back to them and say, hey, we did great. and buy some of their stuff, okay?
That's right.
I turned you on. We did a little bit of filming at Erie Outfitters, which
Erie Outfitters, yeah.
Yep, they're the hottest bait store on the lake. It's in the Central Basin. Guy named Craig owns that place, and he does a great job. And honestly, people who come from out of state know to contact Craig because he's going to give them some recent information on where the best bites are.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not that big a deal. I mean, you can get up there, just hook on the boat, get up there. Don't worry about, and give yourself 4 or 5 days or whatever, because you never know about weather. But that's anywhere you go, and it's just a neat place. It's something different. You'll get to bring home some of the best eating fish that you can catch anywhere, and if you just use common sense, and if you got 6-foot rollers out there, well, then don't go. Yeah. Or find a place. I mean, that place is big enough. I'm sure you can find a place that's out of the wind, and you could go there and catch your fish.
Well, here's one little secret also that is a secret, okay? There's a circuit called the Lake Erie largemouth circuit, okay? No smallmouth, largemouth only. Now, most of the fish for those are caught in the harbors, and there's some really big harbors. I mean, miles-long harbors with open water and docks and creeks and riprap, and you can use your square bills and your spinner baits, and just like you would down south, okay? But people don't realize how good the fishing for largemouth is getting on Lake Erie. For example, there were multiple tournaments won last year on Lake Erie that their best 5 fish went over 25 pounds. Now, 25 pounds on Gunnersville is a solid weight, okay?
Oh.
And so you come on Lake Erie, not only are you targeting smallmouth, but if you get stuck in some of the harbors, now, granted, you might have an 80 fish day, and most of those fish are 1-2 pounders, but there's plenty of big fish to be had for the largemouth, and guys are starting to become experts on knowing where to target those bigger largemouth too, to be honest with you. And that's a secret. Most people, that hasn't gotten out yet, but I'm here to tell you now. For example, the Bassmaster Opens come to the Port Clinton area. A lot of the guys don't feel comfortable running out on the water for whatever reason, and so they'll stay in an area called East Harbor, which is a very, very big harbor, and they'll regularly pull out 16 to 18 pounds in their sleep. I mean, without even trying, they'll pull 16 to 18 pounds for their weight, So the largemouth fishing is excellent. So if you don't worry about not fishing at all, if you do make the trip up, because there's still plenty of fishable waters inside the harbors and up in the rivers, come on out. We got great people out here who rely on the tourism. They're going to treat you great. Mm-hmm. They're going to feed you, and they're going to give you good information on where, how, and what to fish.
It's basically it's not that expensive of a trip either, as far as once you get there, depending on where you're coming from. I mean, the price of gas getting to and from will be your major expense. I mean, the lodging over there's so many cool places that you can stay that is actually neat. I mean, you've got your Westons and your Holiday Inn Expresses everywhere or whatever, but then you've got your mom and pop places and your cool places that you can stay also, which that's the ones that I prefer. And, you get over there, like I said, around the Port Clinton area. If you're a smallmouth guy and fish around the islands, you can get out of the wind and visit there at Put-in Bay. I mean, there's a lot of good history at that little place right there. It's just neat as it can be. And those people live over there on that island, and it's got the history of the old wineries and everything over there. You can learn a lot and visit a lot of people. Everybody's friendly. Like I said, there's good places to eat. And it's just a fun place. I mean,
it's a great place to bring your wife too, okay? Because she can shop on the island and Put-in Bay while you go fishing, and you keep the wife happy. Or you can drop her off at the winery and keep her happy, and then
yeah, she'll do that. Well, anyway, hey man, we appreciate it, Jonathan, having you on here. I hope that people will take it serious about getting up around the Lake Erie area. There's a lot of water to fish. There's a lot of fish you got them really probably fired up when you was talking about them 50 million walleye moving from west to east. And but because I know, trust me, I've been there. You get into that school of fish and you get on them. I mean, it's just, you can really catch a mess of them. What's the limit on a walleye? there?
During the spawn, it's 4 per person, but it'll be bumped up to 6 at the end of May. By the end of May, it bumps up to 6 a person. And if you have 6 fish that are 5 to 10 pounds, you got a whole bunch of meat. I mean, a whole bunch of meat. Okay, it only takes one 8-pounder, and you got enough to feed 4 people. Okay, so you can home a whole mess of meat too with you.
All right, my man.
I'd like to remind everybody you can check out my YouTube channel with Jonathan Shoemaker. And if you are going to come up, don't be afraid to message me on Facebook or through my YouTube channel. I'll either take you out personally, I'll put you on the fish, or I'll make sure a very reliable charter captain gets you out there.
You can't beat that, boys. I've laid it right here in your lap. So now if you want to go do this, I mean, don't knock the fact that he does like the Buckeyes. But go ahead, I'll give you some props. Go ahead, there you go. I'll let you show that. All right, and but he's a good dude, man. Jonathan's fun. If you get the opportunity to go fishing with him, you're really going to have a blast, and maybe he'll even sing when he catches every fish like he did with me. But anyway, hey, man, make sure you check out frippandfolly.com. The new spring-summer patterns of the shirts are out. You'll love them. Check them out. Get you some. Jonathan, anything else to add or sign you off? I appreciate you taking all this time. You've talked 3/4 of the time, and we appreciate it. If there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. Just make sure, again, check him out on his YouTube page at Jonathan Shoemaker, and then also over on Facebook, Jonathan with an A, 2 A's. And I tell you, he's a super nice guy. He's a G3 guy.
And a Christian, a solid Christian.
There you go. There you go. You can't beat that, man. That's a pair to beat a full house. A Christian and a G3. You can't beat that. So anyway, man, we're going to sign off from here. Thank you guys for watching again. We'll be live again next Monday night at 7 Central with somebody. I don't know yet who, but I'm sure we'll find somebody that'll be entertaining us for a while. I don't know if they'll beat what Jonathan did with us, but we'll find somebody on here. But Jonathan, thank you again for coming on here, and I'll talk to you real soon. And for now,
send me some of them cool shirts.
We're good. I'll get you. I know somebody that knows somebody, and so we'll try to get you some of them shirts. Size large.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, we're gonna sign out.
Better for me, medium works better.
Do you think medium? Would you?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll do that, man. Check out frippandfolly.com. Jonathan Shoemaker on YouTube. If you really want to look at something just to pass the time away, G3 Sportsman YouTube page. Check out G3 Boats. Everybody, I think I've thrown all the shameless plugs in. And we're going to sign out here. Jonathan, thank you, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.